Good morning, friends, family, those who are supporters of Old St. Andrews. It's good to be with you this morning. As you can see, we have switched our day to Tuesdays. It works better for the staff for us to be here at these times. And so I want to thank those who join us live or those who will be watching the recorded session. This morning, I have Liz Miller with us. Liz, hello.
Hi.
Good to have you here today. As if you don't know, if you all are if somebody's watching who's new to OSA, Liz is our director of music, and she's been doing that for quite some time. Liz, why don't you tell us how long you've been at the work of music at OSA?
I came to Old St. Andrews in October of 2002, actually. I had just graduated from college and just moved here to figure out what I was going to do. And this was my first job. And I started as the alto section leader in the choir then. And in 2009, our previous music director, Yves Venn, left. And I was asked to take over as interim music director. And then the rest is history. I'm still here.
You're still here.
19 years later.
So you started out as a section leader,
Yes.
which we're going to talk a little bit about that. That whole concept of a section leader in a choir. And then we'll break that down a little bit because I think that's an important part of our conversation. So let's see, that's 18 years?
19.
19 years doing this.
So everyone watching has a 1-year head start to plan my fabulous 20-year anniversary next fall.
All right. We'll definitely get on that. Especially choir members, you need to make sure and be aware of this. Vestry, you need to make sure and be aware of this because we are coming up on 20 years. That's exciting. I mean, that's a long time.
20 years of Liz.
20 years of Liz. So in 20 years, obviously started out as section leader, moved to the director of music. What would you say in those 19 years has been the most rewarding aspect of your work as a section leader and as a director of music?
I would say as a director of music, maybe the most rewarding, I guess I would say two things. As an administrator, in my role in administrating the music program here, I think the most rewarding thing has been the development of our concert series. That's something that I was really proud of when we started. We have such a beautiful space here. We have a congregation that is so enthusiastic about a wide range of styles of music, and a committee that's been dedicated to making sure that not only do we have the concerts here, but that they're just beautifully done. We have these beautiful receptions. We have a really efficient system of taking tickets and tracking our subscribers, and just a really enthusiastic group of people who are welcoming and who help with publicity. And it's just been a really nice thing for me as the head of the concert series to be able to say to people in the community that we have this beautiful venue here, that we host a lot of different kinds of concerts, and that we welcome everybody to come and experience them. The concerts are, I'm really proud that we've kept the price point accessible to anyone who wants to come, and that it's just a really nice, casual, I would say, and homey experience to come to a concert here.
Yeah, I would have to say as the rector, I've been here 4 years, so just almost 1/4 of what you've been. And I would say that the concert series, I think, is one of the hidden gems at OSA. Now, unfortunately, it's on hold this year, or last year and into this year because of COVID, but I anticipate that we'll hopefully get out of this nightmare of COVID and get back into the concert series. But I do have to say, it's really, it's a home run for OSA.
It's wonderful. And, even though my training as a musician and my primary interest is in classical music, I think one of the greatest things about it is that we have hosted a really diverse range of concerts. We've had everything from sort of what you would consider a typical classical type of concert, like string quartets, and brass ensembles, to folk music. We've had our wonderful Jolly Beggars a number of times.
Yep.
We've had the Porch Party Mamas. We've had handbell ringing. I mean, over 8 seasons, we've hosted a lot of different types of music, and all of those have been brought to the committee by people in the congregation who have, in some cases, had a connection to somebody in one of these groups, or told us about a great concert that they went to that we were then able to bring here. And I've learned a lot about the musical community of Greater Hartford that I didn't even know about before
Yeah.
when we started, which is great. I would say, as a musician and as the director of the choir, probably my musical highlight of being here has been was the first Bach cantata that we did, which was, I'm blanking out on the year, but if you were here, it must have been in 2017 or
I think
18.
it was 2018.
Right, when you came, or shortly after you came, and we did one of the most famous and beloved Bach cantatas, 140, Sleepers Awake, which is an Advent time cantata. Actually, there were no cantatas done during Bach's time in Advent proper because it was viewed as a penitential season.
Mhm.
But the story of the 10 virgins and
Yeah.
and lighting the lamp, and neither the day or the hour has become so synonymous with our understanding of Advent that we put it during Advent. Um, don't tell the diehard Lutherans that we did that, but and it was just such a moment to be able to stand up in front of our choir. Did me to lead them through a piece in German. We don't have any native German speakers in the congregation, and singing a Bach cantata is a little bit outside the comfort zone of a lot of our choir members, but they were game for it, and a lot of them who didn't anticipate enjoying it ended up enjoying it, and it was just such a great moment to walk out into our beautiful sanctuary and stand in front of a professional chamber orchestra and our wonderful choir and sing some of the music that is part of the foundation of our church and our religion itself.
Yeah.
And I know we're going to talk about the section leaders, and our position in the community as a patron of the arts, which the church has historically always been. But we wouldn't have any of the music of Bach if there weren't that dedication on the side of the church of employing artists
Yeah.
and of making music be so central to the celebration of the liturgy. I mean, we wouldn't have any of it.
Yeah.
And to be able to do it, to perform a cantata in our worship space with our choir, like in a space that was here when Bach was alive,
Mm.
was, to me, I just, it was one of those times where you do something and like you do it, and then later it like kind of hits you how incredible the moment was. Um and I've watched the recording of it several times, and I just can't believe that we did it and that the church gave me that opportunity to do that. So that's something I'll be forever grateful for.
That I would say that's, I mean, I'm sure, I mean, when I look at some of the history and see some of the older videos, I mean, this parish has done a lot of things. You've
Yeah.
had kind of talent show events.
Mhm.
I mean, that's probably not the right term for it, but you've done a variety of things. But I do have to say, to pull off that Bach cantata is something huge, and you could feel the spirit of it very, very much so. And what I think is really amazing about it is it does demonstrate that even with a smaller choir, and at
Mhm.
that time, I think we were, what, 20, 25 people probably singing?
Approximately, yeah. And we
Um,
had a few people who came in for that, but
yeah.
yeah, about that.
But yeah, I mean that as a magnificent event to pull off. So I definitely I think that's a milestone mark in this long history
Mm.
of OSA. Well, on that note, no pun intended, um, what would you say has been the most challenging aspect of being not only a section leader, but probably because you deal with administrative stuff as a
Right.
music director? What's been the most challenging thing?
Um, I guess as an administrator, the most challenging thing has been that the past couple of years we've been dealing with a deficit budget and th- I mean not just here at Old St. Andrews but everywhere. I also teach at the University of Hartford, and the Hart School is the music school within the greater university, and I saw this happen even at the University of Connecticut when I was a graduate student there, that when there are money struggles, the arts are the first thing that sort of gets squeezed. And it's happening even here in our little church, that, as the budget has become more stretched over the past couple of years, we've had to deal with cuts, in the music program that have, in my opinion, really compromised, some of the things that we can do and eliminated some things that we've loved doing over the years. So I guess as an administrator and as an artist who kind of hates dealing with money and real world things overall, that's been kind of hard. As the director of the choir, I think COVID has to be the biggest challenge that
Yeah.
we've ever come across. Um, the choir here at Old St. Andrews has always been a jewel and always been the largest ministry within the really the one that meets the most during normal times before meets twice a week, 40 weeks out of the year. There really aren't other ministries of this size that meet this frequently and make the commitment that the choir makes. Um, but over the years, we have had some attrition within the choir. We've lost some members either due to them facing health challenges and feeling that they could no longer make that commitment. People have moved away. And so we've been dealing with a declining membership in the group, in general. And COVID really, um, I would say, kind of hit the gas pedal on that, sort
Mhm.
of exacerbated that. So we went from in 2018 having 25 singers on stage for our Bach cantata to now at full strength having 9 members
Mhm.
of the choir. Um, and that's difficult, because it does sort of make decisions for me about what repertoire we can do, um, and how robust, the group can be.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if you wanna talk about the section leader at
Well,
this point, but
so one of the things that we did as a community most recently, because of some of the challenges we were experiencing with COVID, is we had 2 different music town halls, one
right.
on a Wednesday night and then one on a Sunday after church. And the one on Wednesday night was primarily choir people,
Mhm.
and they get it, they understand it, they know a lot of the history of how this choir has been, how we've had section leaders. And I want to note for a lot of people that uh, it's easy to take for granted having paid section leaders in a choir because a lot of church choirs are simply volunteer.
Mhm.
And so, for those of you who maybe are at a church experience or don't know about the choir experience at OSA, we've had historically paid section leaders, which, 4 sections in a choir, you can an ideal world would be have a paid person in every section,
Yes.
bass, tenor, alto, soprano. We've had alto
Mhm.
leaders, we've had right now we have a tenor section leader,
Yep.
and and it is such a blessing to have that, and
Yes.
we have been a community that has believed in providing that,
Right.
that has been important. However, a lot of people don't get that. And at our Sunday music town hall, you had shared with us, and I'm going to ask you to do that here in a minute, about what a section leader does and why they're important. And the look across the 10 to 12 people that were gathered to hear that was like, we had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
So, can you tell us a little bit, very quickly, the history of section leaders? Because that's how you started.
Right.
And then tell us why they're so vital to the success
Yes.
of a choir.
So when I first came to Old St. Andrews in 2002, I came in as the alto section leader. And at that time, I was joining two other section leaders. We had a soprano section leader who many people watching this podcast will know and lovingly remember, Kim Wiggin, who functioned as the soprano section leader. I later found out that she was not taking a salary. So she was treated as the section leader, but actually was not being compensated because she was a member of the church and didn't feel she wanted to be. And we had a bass section leader at that time as well, who left shortly after I came, but we overlapped for a little while. So at the time, even though the choir actually was kind of closer to the numbers that we have now, we had three section leaders in the choir. And then if you fast forward to the whole time between 2002 and 2009, when I was a section leader, we always had two, plus we had Kim most of the time. She eventually moved to Maine full time after she retired from her teaching job in Suffield, and now no longer attends Old St. Andrews regularly. But we always had myself plus another section leader. And then when I took over in 2009, um, the way that the vestry decided to figure out how to make where there had previously been one director of music, which was Yves Venn. He was the organist and the choir director. Was that they split the salary, but they added my section leader salary into the mix so that we could have two viable positions, because I'm, as many of you know, not a functional organist. And we were excited about the opportunities that would come from having the split position, from having a regular accompanist slash organist and a choir director slash music director administrator. And so when that happened, we lost that line item in the budget for this second section leader position. But we had a parishioner step up, a choir member kind of come forward and say that they would underwrite a section leader position so that we could still have two section leaders in the choir. And so from 2009 to this past May, May of 2021, we have still had our two section leaders, one that's paid for by the church and one that was underwritten by this parishioner. Unfortunately, this parishioner felt this past May that due to rising costs on their end, that they had to cut on some of their charitable giving, and the section leader position was a casualty of that. And we had to let go one of our section leaders. So that's sort of where we find ourselves in the midst of this huge challenge of COVID. Um, and then on top of it, having also lost our section leader, our second section leader. So we still do have Austin Tewksbury, who's incredible. Currently is our only tenor in the choir. He also sings and assists with the basses, and sings beautiful solos, as you know, if you were here this past Sunday as well. Um, but we are functioning now with one section leader. And I would say, just on your point, Tim, that, people can take for granted the music that they hear when there are professional section leaders in the choir, that during my tenure at Old St. Andrews, they've never not had that.
Yeah.
So it's a nice thing that we have it. And I think people have gotten used to it because this church has historically made such an extraordinary commitment to music.
Yeah. And I mean, that happens in a lot of
Yeah.
things, especially in a church. I
Mhm.
mean, we can take for granted There's a lot of churches in the diocese that I would say who are now feeling the pain financially of having to move from a full-time rector to a part-time rector,
Yeah.
or the 3/4 time, or quarter time. And there's a big sigh, like, oh my goodness, we didn't realize what we had.
Right.
And so
Isn't there a song,
there might
Joni
be.
Mitchell song, "Don't it always seem to
Yeah.
go?"
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And so, so the reality is that we might take for granted, wow, we've had this wonderful music,
Right.
and then not realize that what was critical to that was section leaders. Not because section leaders are necessarily, they're not the choir. It
Right.
takes the whole choir.
Of course.
But if you have a volunteer who loves to sing, but maybe didn't study music, I mean, because we have people in the choir that don't even read music,
Mhm.
but they love to sing,
Right.
and they love to sing worship music. And so they may say, my goodness, having a section leader, somebody who is a musician, sitting next to me allows me to be able to sing.
Yes.
Because when I listen to them and then look at my music, I learn from them. They help my pitch.
Right.
They're a guide for me. I think so. I think that that's one of the things that we can either take for granted or we don't realize, that we're not just paying section leaders to pay section leaders, throw away money, or think that they're the only important part of a choir, because that's not true at all.
No. Choir, I say to the choir often that choir is the only sport where nobody sits on the bench and everybody starts every game.
Yeah.
It's everyone in the choir has a particular individual gift that they bring. Some people's voices are big, some people's voices are small. Is have big names, some people's voices don't. It doesn't really matter if you think you're the most talented singer. It matters what you bring to the aggregate, and you add value. Everybody adds value to the choir. Um, and everybody, in order for the sound to be consistently good, we need everyone.
Mhm.
We need everyone to be there. And so what the section leaders do is actually a multi-level benefit, because everything that you said is right on the nose, that the section leaders contribute to the confidence level of the volunteer singers. They sit in the section, they reliably sing the right notes and the right rhythms, which for some of our volunteer members who don't read music is really helpful. And even for some of our more experienced singers in the choir, we are so blessed at Old St. Andrews that at one point in our choir, we had 4 retired music teachers. I mean, who has that? Nobody. People who can fill in at the organ bench, people who can fill in for me conducting if I'm sick one morning. This is a real embarrassment of riches at Old St. Andrews. But the section leaders boost up, to use a biblical term, the least of us, and also add confidence to those who have the experience. Even people who read music, if they weren't professional singers, aren't always confident about their singing. And the section leaders lead sectional rehearsals. People who aren't in the choir may not know, we don't sit together as a group and sing for the entire hour and a half long rehearsal. Sometimes we break up into parts, and having me take one group of maybe the sopranos, our alto section leader takes the altos downstairs to the basement where we have another piano. Maybe Austin takes the tenors and basses into the church and works with them, or maybe he takes one group and then Frank takes another group. And then we can really work intensively on trickier parts. And then we come back together and sing together with this like really even stronger understanding and elevated comfort level about the music that the section leaders provide. Because if everybody just had to sit there while I work with one section at a time in the bigger choir rehearsal, then it's not the best use of everybody's time, right? And with a volunteer group, we have to make sure that we're giving a great experience and making the best use of everybody's time because everybody's so busy, which segues into how the section leaders benefit me at an administrative level is that with a mostly volunteer group, one of the challenges I run into is that people, they take vacations. They want to go visit their grandchildren. Maybe somebody's sick one day or, any number of myriad excuses that are completely valid to miss choir. But it's hard to plan for that, right? And so as I'm looking at a whole season and planning music, I know that even if I'm missing a few people on a given Sunday, if I have my section leaders, we can do whatever piece I've planned because we'll have that strong core at the nucleus of the choir, boosting everybody up and shoring up the foundation, the musical foundation, so that anything we had planned is possible. If that isn't the case, we may get in on a Sunday morning to find that all 3 of our altos are out. And all of a sudden I have to scratch the anthem and do something else during that time in the service. So it's not a singular benefit. It's really a multifaceted benefit that we get both as a choir, as a staff, and as a congregation out of the section leaders.
Yeah. And, and one of the things that, because let's face it, one of the big debates that always happens in churches is about music. And one of the things that'll happen is that, I've actually heard people say it, not necessarily here, but I've heard people say it in other places where I've served. Well, why can't the section leaders volunteer their time? Which is a legitimate question. But then that pushes us to, if we're going to go down that slippery slope, then what that and why does the rectors volunteer their preaching time,
right,
or the director of music?
Why shouldn't your doctor volunteer his time? Why shouldn't your dentist volunteer his or her time? I mean, every pursuit is a profession. And I think, everybody deserves to be fairly compensated for their time. And, just because we're musicians and we enjoy what we do, I can't take that to the grocery store and say, like, I don't have any money, but I really love what I do. So can I have this bag of groceries?
Well, there's not only that, but I think the one of the shortcomings of churches is that we tend to think everything should be volunteer based. Now, trust me, we need volunteers.
We sure do.
We need volunteers to step into to the various ministries we do. We also need paid people who have specialized in that particular work of ministry to lead volunteers. And so that's an important part. We can't neglect that. We can't just say, well, let's all just volunteer, because then a church, it just won't run.
Right.
Because, you get paid to do specific things and put in certain hours that allow the volunteers to then excel.
Right.
I do the same. And I have a responsibility to provide pastoral care. And, Frank is our organist, and he gets paid to lead the volunteers in excelling. That's why we have an office person. That's why we have a technology person, is we pay in these positions so that our volunteers can excel. And again, we can't take that for granted. I think that we have a tendency as churches, and I'm not saying this is an OSA thing, I'm saying this is the church at large thing, that we have to recognize the balance between a paid staff and a volunteer leadership. And so and I think that is demonstrated very clearly in the section leader part of what we do as a community.
Right.
We have leaders who we have expectations of. You have expectations as being the manager of they'll be here to lead. They'll teach volunteers. They'll lead those volunteers in the singing of music. They'll take a group off and work on that section's piece. And that is critical to being an excelling choir. One of the things that I think sometimes happens is we think that we need to achieve perfection. We're not going to achieve a perfection, but we're going to achieve excellence.
Yes.
And one of the ways we do that is we have section leaders that help us excel.
And I think about some of the things we've done over the past few years. We did, I don't remember when we did it, if you were here, Tim, but I mean, a few years ago, we did the Bibel Ave Maria for double choir within which is an a cappella, just amazing piece. We did a Renaissance motet standing up in the balcony, around the sides of the church. We've done so many different things over the years that are honoring the history of sacred music in the church. And if I could step on my soapbox, my college professor soapbox for just a second, again, I alluded to this before, but the modern church's history is inextricably linked with music history, and art history and the history of architecture. I mean, the church has recognized the value of artists for centuries. And the fact that we still have the ability to be patrons of the arts, because artists need, I mean, it's a reciprocal relationship. The church needs musicians. Musicians need the church. We need opportunities in the community to practice our art and our training and our purpose in life. And the church is one of these big institutions that for many, many years has been an outlet for high quality professional music to happen in front of people.
Well, and to throw this in here, even though the modern church, as we talked about in our consumerist podcast, also perform that in front of God.
Yeah.
To sing, to make a joyful noise to the Lord. And so, when we have leadership that can help us excel at that, I can't help but think that, that God is pleased with that too, which also means that we can't take for granted all of our ministries. So, because if we neglect music or we start cutting music out of two things tend to get cut in churches: music, performing art type things, and outreach. Two things that I think keep a church viable.
Yeah.
So we need to not take for granted the fact that we have a blessed life that can help care for someone else, whether that's through singing or whether that's through feeding or whether that's providing shelter or helping people, maybe somebody who's a refugee who's trying to escape a horrible situation in another country. We are privileged to have these opportunities to do the Lord's work. And singing is, I think, one of those key things. Because let's face it, music empowers us to do all the things we do. Yeah. I mean, people sing in the shower, they sing on their way to work, they play their favorite, country channel or the pop channel or their symphony NPR music, whatever it might be, and it inspires them. And so we can't take that for granted here.
No, when I taught music history and, gen ed music history at both UConn and St. Joe's, I would always say at the first lecture, like, why do you need music? Why are we here? Why are we talking about this? Is music important to you in your life? And the students would all, yes. You walk around West Hartford Center or a college campus or anywhere, even just looking at the bike path here in front of the church, people always have their headphones in because they can't imagine their life and even just their daily activities without music.
Exactly. And I think that, I think from a scientific standpoint, and no way am I a scientist, not going to claim that I am, having read some work on the science of music, just the science of rhythm in life
Yeah.
is an embodiment of kind of a rhythmic musical process.
Hmm.
And so even if somebody maybe does not hear the same way I hear, they can still hear certain rhythms or sounds or vibrations,
Hmm.
which is what music is.
Yep.
And so, really, at the heart, I mean, music is such a central part of our living experience.
Yes.
The rhythm of and vibration, sound waves, all of that stuff. And so, one of the hot things that I know that's happening now, especially in the medical world, is music therapy,
Hmm.
using music to create therapeutic opportunities for people for healing. And so we can't take that for granted. So one of the things that I know we're getting towards the end of our time here, and so I want to put two things out there. First of all, for those of you who end up listening to this podcast, it's important for you to recognize how vital music is to our community. Even if you aren't a classically trained musician, and maybe you like some other style of music, that's okay. And I've give Liz big credit for, especially in our concert series, for reaching out to various styles of music. And I'm confident that we will continue to explore that once we get past COVID. But it's important for us to recognize that we have to financially support our parish in a variety of ways, and music is one of those. That's been an area where we've cut out of our budget as a vestry. And I believe it's an area where we can't take that for granted. And we got to make sure that we are focusing on returning budget line items to support our music program. That's the first thing I want to say. The second thing that I want to say alongside of that is for people to recognize that uh, the choir,
Hmm.
that there are plenty of opportunities. Like, we would have a children's choir if we had children.
Yeah.
I mean, and maybe we could even, it'd be wonderful to invest in somebody because as the director, you've got oversight of so many things. If we could invest in somebody that could help lead that process,
Yeah.
if we could get more instruments here, we love it when there's a string quartet here, the
Hmm.
trumpets
Yep.
at Easter, the Christmas music. Folks, I'm telling you, if we don't financially support it, we will not have those things. They were cut out of the budget.
This is the first Christmas Eve we're facing in my 19-year tenure where we are looking at not having special musicians. And I don't think I fully internalized it because I'm just so hoping that someone will step forward and say, I want to underwrite that, and then, challenge the vestry to find a way next
Mhm.
year to work that back in. I can't imagine Christmas Eve without our sparkly strings.
Yeah, yes. And so on that note, I want to say I put up my email, and I put Corey's email up. Corey's usually the co-host with us. She's under the weather, was not able to be with us today. Corey, if you're out there watching, keeping you in our prayers for
Yes,
healing,
we
and
hope
that
you're
you
feeling better soon.
exactly. But I do want to say right now, because for 2021, we had to pull things out of that were used towards music. If you would like to be a donor to support music for Christmas time, email me. You can email Liz. I don't have her email up here, but we can make sure and get that to you. Liz is going to be sending out a letter talking about what we've talked about today, so people can, if they so choose. Uh, we'll have an envelope in there. They can send in donations to support our special music,
Mhm.
to support the music program. And then also, I want to invite everybody, believe it or not, it's September, pledge season is upon us, to really think about the way this works is the money we give as pledgers.
Mhm.
So if we can increase our giving to support the ministries that we do across the board and get back into the budget those things that we've had to cut, I think it will add to the viability of our parish. So we've got to do that. And to that end, I want to let everybody know that next week, because the other thing that tends to get cut in congregations is outreach. Next week, we're going to be talking about some of the outreach programs we have. Food Share and the work that we do with Church of the Good Shepherd and the mobile food share. With the backpack program that is starting up again in October, we've had a meeting with the new leader of that at the Congregational Church in Bloomfield. So we're going to be talking about that, and we're going to shed some more light on some of the things we do, especially around the holiday time, that has to do with outreach. All of this is part of who we are as a community, not a community that's just trying to survive, but a community that longs to thrive in the ministries we do. Liz, I want to say thank you for being here and taking time out of a super busy day. I know you've got, with 3 or 4 different jobs going on in your life these days, plus doing a kitchen. So
yes.
So you're busy, and you're going to go right from here to teach music. Right?
Over to the Heart School. Yep.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you to everyone for being a part of our podcast. We will see you next Tuesday, same time, 11 o'clock. Be well, my friends.
Thank you.